I'm Natalie Anderson, 26, and I've always been the responsible daughter. I put my promising finance career on hold to rescue my parents' struggling real estate business in Chicago. For 5 years, I managed their books, paid bills, and even covered the mortgage. Then one day, after mentioning my plans to finally move on, they exploded. "You're ungrateful. Get out and never come back." So I did. 3 months later, Dad texted, "Why haven't you paid the mortgage?" Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see how I turned this heartbreaking moment into the best decision of my life. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in the suburbs of Chicago. My parents, Robert and Karen Anderson, had always been strict with high expectations. Dad worked in real estate while Mom managed the administrative side of their small family business. From a young age, they instilled in me the importance of responsibility, hard work, and family loyalty. Numbers always came naturally to me. While other kids struggled with math homework, I found joy in solving complex problems. By high school, I was handling my own finances, budgeting my allowance, and even helping classmates understand economics. This natural talent led me to pursue a degree in business finance at the University of Illinois. College was transformative. For the first time, I was away from my parents' constant oversight and expectations. I thrived academically, made the dean's list every semester, and secured an internship at a prestigious financial firm downtown. My professors encouraged me to apply for graduate programs or entry-level positions at top firms. The future looked bright, with offers already coming in during my final semester. Then the recession hit. Like many real estate businesses, my parents' company took a severe blow. Property values plummeted, clients disappeared, and suddenly, the stable business they'd built over 20 years was on the verge of collapse. During spring break of my senior year, I came home to find Mom crying at the kitchen table, surrounded by past due notices. "We might lose everything, Natalie," she sobbed. "The business, the house, everything." What was meant to be a short conversation turned into an all-night strategy session. Using my finance knowledge, I reviewed their books and identified several areas where they could cut costs and restructure their debt. Dad looked at me with newfound appreciation. "You know, Nat," he said, using my childhood nickname, "you could really help us turn this around." What started as a suggestion quickly evolved into an expectation.
"Just for a few months," they said.
"Until we get back on our feet." My graduation came and went, and instead of starting my career at a firm in Chicago, I moved back home to help save the family business. The arrangement seemed simple at first. I would handle the finances, accounting, and property management, freeing my parents to focus on client relationships and sales. We agreed that I would receive a modest salary, much less than what I could earn elsewhere, but enough to cover my student loans and personal expenses. What wasn't explicitly discussed but somehow became my responsibility was the mortgage on the family home. As I reorganized their finances, I realized they couldn't afford the monthly payments. Without telling them, I started covering it from my own savings, thinking it would only be temporary. 1 month became 2, then 6, then a year. The business slowly improved thanks to my modernized accounting systems, digital marketing strategies, and more efficient property management processes. Yet each time I mentioned my plans to eventually move on, subtle guilt trips followed. "We're not out of the woods yet," Dad would say. "Who would handle everything if you left?" Mom would ask, her voice laced with anxiety. Meanwhile, my college friends progressed in their careers. Melissa Warren, my best friend since freshman year, was already receiving her second promotion at a marketing firm. My brother Tyler had moved to California for a tech job, seemingly immune to the family obligation that had ensnared me. During family gatherings, relatives would ask about my career and my parents would proudly interject, "Natalie is the financial wizard behind our business recovery." They'd brag about my skills but conveniently omit that I had sacrificed my own ambitions to save theirs. 5 years passed this way. I turned 26 and realized I was still living in my childhood bedroom, still postponing my dreams, still carrying the financial burden of my parents' mortgage. The business had not only recovered but was thriving, largely due to my strategies and tireless work. Yet there was never acknowledgement that my temporary help had become permanent, or that I deserved more than the meager salary I received. Resentment grew inside me, a quiet flame that I tried to extinguish with family loyalty. But with each passing month, as more of my savings went toward their mortgage, as more job opportunities slipped away, the flame grew stronger. I began researching financial consulting businesses, creating a business plan in secret late at night. I opened a separate bank account, built a portfolio based on my work with my parents, careful not to violate any confidentiality, and started networking with potential clients. If my parents wouldn't release me from my obligation, perhaps I could build something of my own alongside it. What I didn't realize was how quickly everything would unravel, how years of unspoken frustration would explode in a single afternoon, and how the words, "get out," and "never come back," would simultaneously shatter and liberate me. It was a Tuesday afternoon in April when everything fell apart. The spring sunshine streamed through the office windows as I finished the monthly financial reports. The numbers were better than ever. The business had seen a 15% increase in revenue compared to the same quarter last year. If there was ever a perfect time to discuss my departure, this was it. I found my parents in the conference room, reviewing property listings for the week. "Do you have a minute? I'd like to discuss something important," I said, clutching my tablet with my business plan pulled up. Mom glanced up briefly. "Can it wait, honey? We're preparing for the Wilsons' showing tomorrow." "Actually, I'd prefer to talk now. It's about my future plans." That got their attention. Dad set down his coffee mug and leaned back in his chair. "What kind of plans?" Taking a deep breath, I launched into my carefully rehearsed speech. "The business is doing great now, better than before the recession. I think it's time for me to pursue my own career path. I've developed a business plan for a financial consulting firm focusing on small businesses. I'd still help out during the transition, of course, but I'm planning to move out and move out." Mom interrupted, her brows furrowing. "Why would you need to move out?" "Because I'm 26, Mom. I need my own space, my own life. This was always supposed to be temporary, remember?" Dad's expression darkened. "So, you're just going to abandon the family business now that it's successful? After we gave you the opportunity to build your experience here?" The word abandon stung. "I'm not abandoning anyone. I've put my career on hold for 5 years to help rebuild what almost collapsed. Most of my college classmates are already in management positions or have their MBAs by now." Mom's voice took on that familiar passive-aggressive tone. "I didn't realize working with your family was such a burden. We thought you valued what we built together." "I do value it," I insisted, feeling the conversation slipping away from me. "But I never intended to make this my permanent career. You both knew that." "Family businesses are about loyalty, Natalie," Dad said sternly. "Your grandfather started this company with nothing but determination. He'd be disappointed to hear you talking about leaving." The unfairness of this statement made my chest tighten. Grandpa would understand wanting to build something of my own. He was an entrepreneur, too. "It's different," Mom said dismissively. "Times were different then." I pulled up the financial reports on my tablet. "Look at these numbers. The business is stable. You could hire a financial manager with the increased revenue. I've even created transition documents and—" "So you've been planning your escape for a while," Dad interrupted, his voice rising. "Behind our backs." "It's not an escape," I said, feeling my own temper flaring. "It's a natural progression. Did you expect me to work here forever, living in my childhood bedroom?" "We expected gratitude," Mom snapped. "After all we've done for you." That was the moment something broke inside me. Gratitude? For what exactly? For the privilege of working 60-hour weeks at half the market salary? For postponing my career to save yours? For paying your mortgage from my savings for the past 3 years? Their shocked expressions confirmed what I had suspected. They had no idea I'd been covering the mortgage. Or perhaps they knew but had conveniently forgotten. "What are you talking about?" Dad demanded. "Check the bank statements," I said, my voice eerily calm despite the storm inside me. "I've been paying the house mortgage since 2021. $3,000 a month from my personal account because the business couldn't afford it and you refused to downsize. A heavy silence filled the room. Then Dad's face reddened. We gave you everything. College education, a job when you graduated, a roof over your head. A roof I've been paying for, I countered, no longer able to contain my frustration. I had job offers after graduation. Good ones. I stay to help you out of loyalty, not because I needed a favor. You've changed, Mom said, tears forming in her eyes. Success has made you selfish. Selfish. I echoed in disbelief. I put my entire life on hold for this family. I've given up relationships, friendships, opportunities, all to keep this business afloat. How is that selfish? If you want to leave so badly, then go. Dad shouted, standing up so abruptly his chair toppled backward. Go chase your big dreams. See if anyone values you out there like we have. Values me? I laughed bitterly. You've taken me for granted for years. You've never once acknowledged that without me, this business would have failed. You've never offered me partnership or equity despite my contributions. You pay me less than you'd pay a stranger with my qualifications. Mom stood up too, her face contorted with anger I rarely saw. After everything we've sacrificed for you, what exactly have you sacrificed for me recently? I challenged. Name one thing. That's when Dad slammed his hand on the table, making the coffee mugs jump. You're ungrateful. Get out and never come back. If this family and business means so little to you, we don't need you here. The words hung in the air like physical things. Mom didn't contradict him. She stood beside him, arms crossed, silent agreement in her posture. You don't mean that, I said, my voice suddenly small. I absolutely mean it, Dad replied coldly. If you want to leave, leave today.
Now.
I stared at them, these people who had raised me, who I'd sacrificed so much for, and saw no recognition of what they were throwing away. In that moment, I made my decision. Fine, I said quietly. I'll be gone within the hour. I walked out of the conference room with my head high, though inside, I was crumbling. In my office, I gathered my personal items, the photos, the coffee mug Melissa had given me, my spare sweater. I transferred all work files to the company server, logged out of all systems, and wrote a brief email with passwords and access instructions for critical financial accounts. Upstairs in my bedroom, I packed a suitcase with essential clothes, toiletries, and important documents. Tears streamed down my face as I moved around the room that had been mine since childhood. I could hear my parents downstairs, their heated voices carrying though I couldn't make out the words. Within 45 minutes, I had loaded my car with what I could take immediately. Neither of my parents came to say goodbye or try to stop me. The house I had helped pay for, the business I had saved, the family I had prioritized above all else. I was leaving it all behind because they had made it clear I was valued only for what I could give, not for who I was. As I pulled out of the driveway, I caught a glimpse of Mom watching from the living room window. Our eyes met briefly before she let the curtain fall. That final image, her turning away, stayed with me as I drove through blurry tears to Melissa's apartment, the only place I could think to go. Melissa's face when she opened her door said everything. One look at my tear-stained face and the suitcase beside me, and she pulled me into a tight hug without a word. That first night, curled up on her couch with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, I poured out the whole story between sobs. I've known your parents since college, and I've always thought they took advantage of you, Melissa said, handing me another tissue. But I never imagined they'd throw you out for wanting your own life. That's next-level toxic. Maybe I was too harsh, I whispered, the guilt already creeping in. Maybe I should call and apologize. Melissa shook her head firmly. Apologize for what? For wanting the same independence they've allowed Tyler? For expecting basic appreciation after saving their business? Nat, you've done nothing wrong. The first week at Melissa's was a blur of emotions. I cycled through grief, rage, doubt, and a crushing sense of betrayal. Every time my phone rang with an unknown number, My heart leapt thinking it might be them calling to reconcile. It never was. By day 10, reality set in. I needed to find my own place and a job. Despite my years of experience managing a successful real estate business, I had no formal employment history outside the family company. In interviews, I struggled to explain the gap in my resume without sounding bitter about my parents. "So, you were the financial director for Anderson Properties for 5 years?" one interviewer asked, looking confused. But there's no reference from them. How could I explain that my own parents would likely badmouth me if called for a reference? Instead, I leveraged connections through Melissa and college alumni networks, securing contract work with a small accounting firm while I planned my next steps. By the end of the first month, I had found a tiny studio apartment I could afford on my new salary. It was nothing like the spacious suburban home I'd left behind, just 300 square feet with a kitchenette and a view of the brick wall of the adjacent building. But it was mine. Moving day brought unexpected emotions. As Melissa helped me arrange my meager belongings in the small space, I had a moment of panic. What have I done? I gave up everything. No, Melissa corrected me, placing a framed photo of us from college on my new desk. You gave up being exploited. There's a difference. Gradually, I established new routines. Morning coffee at the corner cafe. Evening walks in the nearby park. Weekend brunches with Melissa and her girlfriend Vanessa Lewis. I opened a business bank account and registered Anderson Financial Consulting as an LLC, reclaiming my name for myself. My first client came through Melissa's network, a small bakery struggling with cash flow issues. The owner, Catherine Rodriguez, couldn't afford traditional financial services, but took a chance on my discounted rates. When I helped her restructure her finances and secure a better loan, she referred me to other small business owners in her network. Slowly, my client list grew. I worked from my tiny apartment or from coffee shops, gradually building a reputation for affordable, accessible financial guidance. Each success felt like a step further from the shadow of my parents' business, proof that I had skills and value entirely my own. The hardest times were holidays and family occasions. Mother's Day came and went without a call. My birthday passed unmarked by anyone except friends. I saw on social media that my brother Tyler had flown home for a weekend, with pictures of the three of them smiling at our favorite restaurant. The exclusion stung more than I wanted to admit. I considered reaching out many times. I drafted text messages that ranged from angry, "How could you treat me this way?" to pleading, "Can we please talk?" But I never sent them. Their silence spoke volumes, and my therapist, Dr. Patricia Jones, whom I started seeing weekly, encouraged me to respect my own boundaries. "They're showing you exactly how conditional their love is," she said during one session. "The question is, do you want to keep accepting those conditions?" As weeks turned to months, the raw pain began to dull. I found unexpected joy in simple freedoms, decorating my apartment exactly as I wanted, eating whatever I felt like for dinner, making plans without checking if my parents needed me. My business grew enough that I could rent a small office space in a co-working building, giving me a professional address for client meetings. Friendships became my anchor. Beyond Melissa, I reconnected with college friends I'd lost touch with during my years of 60-hour workweeks. I joined a book club, started taking yoga classes, and even went on a few dates, though nothing serious developed. 3 months after leaving, I realized something surprising. Beneath the lingering hurt, I was happier than I'd been in years. The constant pressure to meet my parents' expectations had lifted. The guilt trips, the subtle manipulations, the diminishing of my ambitions, all gone. In their place was a growing confidence in my abilities and decisions. Then came the text that shattered my hard-won peace. "Why haven't you paid the mortgage this month?" My father's name on my screen after 3 months of silence, not asking how I was, not apologizing, but demanding money. In that moment, everything changed again. I stared at my phone screen, reading and rereading the text from my father. 3 months of complete silence. And this was what broke it? Not concern for my well-being or regret for harsh words, but a demand about the mortgage payment. My hands trembled slightly as the implications sank in. They had kicked me out, told me never to come back, yet somehow still expected me to financially support them. The entitlement was staggering. I showed the message to Melissa over coffee the next morning. Her eyebrows shot up in disbelief. "You've got to be kidding me," she said, nearly spitting out her latte. "They throw you out and then ask why you're not still paying their bills? That's next-level delusional." I nodded, still processing the mixture of hurt and indignation. It's like they saw me as nothing but a checkbook all along. After careful consideration and a long talk with Dr. Jones, I crafted a response that was neither emotional nor confrontational. I thought I wasn't welcome anymore. Those 6 words opened a floodgate. Within minutes, my phone buzzed with a series of texts from Dad. "This isn't about welcome. It's about responsibility. The business is struggling without you. Your mother is stressed about losing the house. We assumed you would still handle the finances regardless of personal disagreements." Each message revealed more about how they viewed our relationship, transactional rather than familial. They hadn't expected me to actually leave. They'd expected me to apologize, come back, and continue carrying their financial burdens while accepting their treatment. Then my mother called. I let it go to voicemail, not trusting myself to speak with her directly. Her message was a masterclass in emotional manipulation. "Natalie, honey, I know you're upset, but we're family. Families fight, but they don't abandon each other. Dad didn't mean what he said. We're really struggling without you. Please call us back. The mortgage is past due, and we could lose our home." No acknowledgement of their role in the estrangement. No apology for telling me to get out. Just pressure to resume my financial support as if nothing had happened. Curious about the claim that the business was struggling, I checked their public listings online. Indeed, there were fewer properties than usual, and I noticed some basic errors in the listing descriptions that I would have caught. Their social media accounts hadn't been updated in weeks, and their quarterly tax filing would be due soon, something I had always handled. I felt a complex surge of emotions: vindication that they were floundering without me, concern for the business I'd helped rebuild, and resentment that they only reached out when they needed something. That evening, I sat with Melissa and her girlfriend Vanessa on their balcony, seeking advice. "Part of me wants to help," I admitted. "Not for them, but for the employees who might lose their jobs if the business fails." "That's your parents' responsibility now," Vanessa pointed out gently. "You can't set yourself on fire to keep others warm." "But what about the mortgage?" I asked. "They could lose their home." "A home they can actually afford if they budget properly," Melissa reminded me. "You've been enabling them to live beyond their means." I brought the situation to my next therapy session with Dr. Jones, who helped me see the pattern more clearly. "They're treating this as a power struggle," she explained. "By continuing to pay their mortgage after they kicked you out, you would be sending the message that their treatment of you is acceptable." "But it feels cruel to just let them lose their house," I argued. "Is it your responsibility to protect adults from the consequences of their own actions and financial decisions?" she asked. "Would you advise a client to continue supporting someone who treated them this way?" Put in those terms, the answer was clear. I wouldn't advise anyone to remain financially entangled with people who devalued them so completely. I drafted a longer response to my father. "I'm sorry to hear the business is struggling. As you made it clear that I was no longer welcome in the family or business, I've established my own financial consulting practice. I'm not in a position to continue paying for a mortgage on a home I was told to leave. I wish you and Mom the best in resolving your financial situation." The response was immediate and hostile. Dad called, and against my better judgment, I answered. "So this is your revenge?" he demanded, his voice tight with anger. "Letting us lose everything because your feelings got hurt?" "This isn't revenge," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. "This is me respecting the boundaries you established when you told me to get out and never come back." We were angry. People say things they don't mean when they're angry. "And yet neither of you called to apologize or check on me for 3 months, I pointed out. "The only reason you're calling now is because you need money." The conversation deteriorated from there, with accusations of disloyalty and selfishness from him, and increasingly firm boundary setting from me. It ended with him hanging up after declaring, I don't even recognize you anymore." Mom tried next, her approach more tearful than angry, but equally manipulative. We're going to lose our home, Natalie. The home you grew up in. How can you let that happen? I'm not letting anything happen, I said firmly. I'm simply no longer preventing the natural consequences of financial decisions that aren't mine to make. As the mortgage payment deadline approached, the messages grew more frequent and desperate. I maintained my boundaries, though each interaction left me emotionally drained. My brother Tyler called, clearly having heard only their side of the story. Can't you just help them out one more time? He asked. For the family? Where were you when they kicked me out? I countered. Did they call you to help with the mortgage then? His uncomfortable silence told me everything I needed to know. The burden had always been mine alone to carry. The situation reached a breaking point when I received a text from Dad. We're coming over tomorrow to discuss this in person. This needs to be resolved. I hadn't given them my address. They must have gotten it from Tyler or tracked me through the registration of my LLC. The boundary violation sent a chill through me, but I also recognized that a face-to-face conversation was inevitable. Fine, I texted back. Tomorrow at 2. But understand that my decision is final. That night, I barely slept, rehearsing what I would say, steeling myself against the emotional manipulation I knew would come. This confrontation would determine whether I could truly break free from the unhealthy dynamic that had defined my relationship with my parents for years. At precisely 2 o'clock the next day, a sharp knock echoed through my small apartment. I took a deep breath, smoothed my shirt, and opened the door to find both my parents standing in the hallway. Mom looked thinner than I remembered, with new worry lines around her eyes. Dad appeared tired but carried himself with the same authoritative posture as always. Come in, I said, stepping aside. The contrast between my tiny studio and our spacious family home wasn't lost on any of us. My mother's eyes swept across the modest space, taking in the fold-out desk, the kitchenette, the bed barely hidden by a room divider. This is where you've been living? She asked, her tone somewhere between concern and judgment. It's what I can afford while building my business, I replied evenly. Please sit down. They perched awkwardly on my small love seat while I took the desk chair, turning it to face them. The coffee table between us felt like a demilitarized zone. You look well, Mom offered tentatively. I am well, I said. My business is growing. I have clients who value my work. Dad cleared his throat, clearly impatient with the pleasantries. Natalie, we need to discuss the mortgage situation. We're already 2 weeks late, and the bank has called twice. No, I've missed you, or I'm sorry. Straight to the financial demand. I understand you're in a difficult position, I said, maintaining eye contact. But as I explained in my messages, I'm no longer in a position to pay for a house I don't live in. This isn't just about the house, Mom interjected, her voice rising slightly. The business is struggling too. The quarterly taxes are due next week, and we don't have the cash flow to cover them. Because you've been paying yourself higher salaries than the business can sustain, I pointed out. I've seen the public records. You increased your personal withdrawals by 20% after I left. Dad's face reddened. We deserve some compensation after years of sacrifice. At the expense of business stability, I countered. That was your choice to make, but now you're facing the consequences. So, you're just going to let everything collapse? Mom's eyes filled with tears. The business your grandfather started? The home where you grew up? All because of one argument. I felt the familiar pull of guilt but resisted it. It wasn't just an argument. You told me to get out and never come back. You made no attempt to contact me for 3 months until you needed money. That tells me everything about how you view our relationship. We were angry, Dad shouted, his composure cracking. You were threatening to abandon the family business after everything we'd done for you. What exactly did you do for me? I asked calmly. For the past 5 years, I've worked for below-market wages. I've paid your mortgage. I've managed your finances, grown your business, and postponed my own career. And in return, I got what? Constant guilt trips? Being taken for granted? Being told I'm selfish for wanting my own life at 26. A heavy silence fell over the room. My father looked away, while my mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "We didn't realize," she began. "You didn't want to realize," I corrected her. It was convenient to have me handle everything without recognition or fair compensation. Dad leaned forward, his expression shifting from anger to calculation. "What would it take to get you to help? Name your price." The transactional nature of the offer confirmed everything I'd been feeling. "This isn't about price, Dad. This is about respect and boundaries." "Then what do you want?" he demanded. I took a moment to gather my thoughts before responding. "If you want my help, it will be as a professional consultant, not as a daughter you can exploit. I'll charge my standard rates for financial services. I'll help restructure the business finances and create a sustainable budget that doesn't rely on me paying your mortgage. But I won't be moving back home, and I won't be working in the family business full-time again." My father stared at me incredulously. "You want us to pay you? After all we've given you?" "Yes," I said simply. "Because my time, knowledge, and expertise have value, just like yours do." "This is ridiculous," he sputtered. "We're your parents, and I'm an adult professional whose services you're seeking," I replied. "Would you ask any other financial consultant to work for free because you're in a tough spot?" My mother looked between us, clearly trying to find a middle ground. "Maybe we could work something out. A family discount, perhaps?" I shook my head. The problem has always been the blurring of family and business. If you want my help, it needs to be a clear professional relationship with boundaries. Dad stood up abruptly. "I can't believe how cold you've become. This isn't how we raised you." "You raised me to value myself and my work," I said, remaining seated. "I'm finally doing that. And if we refuse your terms," he challenged, "then you'll need to find another solution to your financial problems," I replied. "There are plenty of financial advisors in Chicago." "But none who know our business like you do," Mom pointed out softly. "That's true," I acknowledged. "Which is why my services would be valuable enough to warrant professional compensation." Dad paced the small space of my apartment, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "We could lose everything, Natalie. The house, the business. Is that what you want?" "Of course not," I said. "But I'm no longer willing to sacrifice my financial security and self-respect to prevent that outcome." "Your grandfather would be ashamed," he said, deploying the ultimate emotional weapon. I felt a flash of anger, but kept my voice steady. Grandpa built his business through hard work and fair dealings. He wouldn't expect anyone to work without proper compensation or recognition, even family. Especially family. My mother reached for my hand, which I reluctantly allowed. "Natalie, please. We need you." "I know you do," I said gently. "But need isn't the same as respect or appreciation. If you want my help, these are my terms." After another 20 minutes of circular arguments, emotional appeals, and attempts at guilt-tripping, my parents finally left, my father storming out with a parting shot. "When we lose the house, I hope you can live with yourself." As the door closed behind them, I collapsed onto the love seat, emotionally exhausted. Tears I'd held back during the confrontation flowed freely now. Despite knowing I'd done the right thing, standing firm against their manipulation had taken every ounce of strength I possessed. I called Melissa immediately, my voice breaking as I recounted the conversation. "I'm so proud of you," she said fiercely. "You stood your ground against some Olympic-level guilt-tripping." "But what if they do lose the house?" I asked, voicing my deepest fear. "What if the business fails? Then they'll have to downsize and rebuild, just like thousands of other adults do when they've been living beyond their means," she replied pragmatically. "It won't be your fault, Nat. It never was your responsibility to begin with." That night, I tossed and turned, replaying the confrontation in my mind. Had I been too harsh? Not firm enough? Would I regret my stance if they lost everything? The questions circled endlessly until dawn broke, finding me tired but still convinced I'd made the necessary choice for my own well-being. What I didn't expect was the strange silence that followed, or how that silence would eventually lead to an unexpected resolution. For a full week after the confrontation, I heard nothing from my parents. The silence was both a relief and a new source of anxiety. Had they found another solution? Were they simply planning their next approach? Or had I truly severed the relationship beyond repair? Meanwhile, my business continued to grow. I signed a contract with Rebecca Sullivan, owner of a growing chain of boutique fitness studios, to overhaul her financial systems and create a scalable model for expansion. The project was exactly the kind of challenging, rewarding work I'd always wanted to do. On the 8th day after my parents' visit, my phone rang with an unexpected name on the screen: Aunt Julia Anderson, my father's sister, who lived in Michigan and rarely involved herself in family drama. "Natalie, it's your Aunt Julia. Do you have a moment to talk?" "Of course," I replied, curious about this unexpected contact. "Is everything okay?" "That depends on your definition of okay," she said with a dry chuckle. "I just had a very interesting conversation with your father about your situation." My stomach tightened. "What did he tell you?" "His version, which I took with a grain of salt. Now I'd like to hear yours." Over the next half hour, I explained everything, from the years of working for the family business, to paying the mortgage secretly, to the final confrontation and its aftermath. Aunt Julia listened without interruption, occasionally making small sounds of acknowledgement. When I finished, she sighed heavily. "That sounds like my brother. He's always had a talent for rewriting reality to make himself the victim." "So, you believe me?" I asked, surprised by the validation. "Completely. And I want you to know something important. Your parents are not on the verge of financial ruin." "What do you mean?" "The business is doing fine. Yes, there are some cash flow issues without your management, but nothing catastrophic. And as for the house, Robert refinanced it 2 years ago and took out a substantial equity line. They have the money to make the payments, they just don't want to dip into their savings." This revelation stunned me. "How do you know this?" "Because your father tried to borrow money from me before coming to see you. When I asked for details, he accidentally revealed more than he intended." "They're not destitute, Natalie. They're just uncomfortable without the financial cushion you provided." The manipulation was even deeper than I'd realized. They hadn't just expected me to continue supporting them, they'd exaggerated their financial distress to pressure me into resuming that support. "Thank you for telling me this," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "It helps to have confirmation that I'm not imagining things." "You're not," Aunt Julia assured me. "And for what it's worth, I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. It's about time someone in the family did." After our call, I felt a new sense of clarity and resolve. The lingering guilt about potentially causing my parents' financial ruin evaporated, replaced by righteous indignation at their deception. 3 days later, my father called. His tone was different, less demanding, more subdued. "We've considered your proposal," he said, without preamble. "We'd like to hire you as a consultant to help reorganize the business finances." I took a moment to process this unexpected capitulation. "What changed your mind?" A pause. "Reality. The quarterly taxes are due Monday, and we don't have the systems in place to file properly without you. We're willing to pay your professional rate for this specific project." It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement of my value, perhaps the first real one in years. "I'll need a formal contract," I said. "And payment in advance for the first 10 hours. "Fine," he agreed, his voice tight but controlled. "Can you email over the paperwork today?" Within hours, I had sent a professional consulting agreement detailing the scope of work, my hourly rate, and payment terms. To my surprise, they signed and returned it the same day, along with a deposit to my business account. Our first meeting took place at my new office in the co-working space, neutral territory that established our new professional relationship. I arrived early to prepare, setting out financial reports, tax forms, and a detailed agenda. When my parents walked in, the dynamic was immediately different from our previous encounter. They weren't entering my personal space as family, they were entering my professional domain as clients. My mother looked around at the modern office with undisguised surprise, while my father maintained a carefully neutral expression. "Thank you for coming," I said, gesturing to the chairs across from my desk. "I've prepared an overview of what we need to accomplish today." For the next 2 hours, We worked through the immediate financial issues facing the business. I explained the tax filing process, identified areas where they'd been overspending, and outlined a sustainable budget moving forward. It was strange and somewhat liberating to interact with them purely as a consultant, without the emotional baggage of family expectations. "You're really good at this," my mother remarked toward the end of the session, genuine admiration in her voice. "I knew you were handling our finances well, but seeing you in this environment." "Thank you," I said, accepting the compliment professionally. Financial strategy has always been my passion. My father, who had been mostly quiet and businesslike throughout the meeting, finally spoke up. "The business has been struggling without your systems. None of the staff understood the processes you put in place." It wasn't quite an admission that they had taken me for granted, but it was close. Over the following weeks, our professional relationship gradually rebuilt some bridge between us. I restructured their financial systems, created documentation that others could follow, and trained one of their administrative staff to handle basic bookkeeping. I was careful to maintain clear boundaries, limiting communication to business hours, keeping conversations focused on work, and sending professional invoices for my time. The most significant shift came during a meeting about reducing unnecessary expenses. I had identified several areas where they could cut costs, including the mortgage on the family home. "You're living in a house that's too expensive for your current income," I explained, showing them the numbers. "Downsizing would free up significant capital for the business." I expected resistance or another emotional appeal about the family home. Instead, my father nodded slowly. "We've actually been looking at condos," he admitted. "After our last conversation, we realized you were right about living beyond our means." My mother added, hesitantly, "We found a nice place closer to downtown. It's smaller, but the maintenance would be easier, and the mortgage would be half what we're paying now." This practical acceptance of reality marked a turning point. They were finally taking responsibility for their financial situation rather than expecting me to bear the burden. As our professional relationship stabilized, tiny cracks appeared in the wall between our personal relationship as well. My mother began to occasionally ask how I was doing before launching into business matters. My father mentioned seeing an article about financial consulting that made him think of me. Small things, but significant given where we'd started. After 2 months of weekly meetings, the business finances were back on track. They had a sustainable budget, proper accounting systems, and trained staff to maintain them. My role shifted from emergency intervention to periodic check-ins and strategic planning. During our final regular session, my mother surprised me by saying, "We miss you, Natalie. Not just your financial expertise. You." I didn't know how to respond immediately. The hurt hadn't disappeared, but it had dulled with time and the establishment of healthier boundaries. "I've missed aspects of our relationship too," I admitted carefully. "But I can't go back to how things were before." "We wouldn't want you to," my father said, the words clearly difficult for him. "We've come to appreciate the new arrangement. Seeing you succeed independently has been enlightening." It wasn't a full apology or recognition of the harm they'd caused, but from my proud, stubborn father, it was significant progress. The true test came when they invited me to dinner at their new condo, a personal invitation entirely separate from our business relationship. After careful consideration and a long talk with Dr. Jones, I accepted. The dinner was awkward but civil. We carefully avoided contentious topics, focusing instead on neutral ground. My brother Tyler's new job, Aunt Julia's garden renovation, neighborhood changes. It wasn't warm or emotionally intimate, but it was respectful, a start toward a new kind of relationship based on adult equality rather than parental authority and filial obligation. As I drove home that night, I realized how far we'd all come from that terrible day when they told me to get out and never come back. The journey hadn't been easy or straightforward, but it had led to something I hadn't expected, not a restoration of what was lost, but the creation of something new and potentially healthier. 1 year after the day I walked out of my parents' house with nothing but a suitcase, I stood in the reception area of my own office, not a desk in a co-working space, but a proper office with my name on the door, Anderson Financial Consulting. The business had grown beyond my initial expectations, with 3 part-time employees and a client list that kept expanding through referrals. The transformation in my professional life was matched by equally significant changes in my personal life. I had moved from the tiny studio to a comfortable one-bedroom apartment with actual sunlight and a small balcony where I grew herbs and flowers. I had developed new friendships, rediscovered old hobbies, and built routines that prioritized my well-being rather than everyone else's needs. My relationship with my parents had evolved into something I never could have imagined during those dark early days. After months of maintaining strictly professional interactions, we had gradually established a new kind of personal connection, not the enmeshed, boundary-violating relationship of before, but something more balanced and respectful. They had downsized to the condo and adjusted their lifestyle to match their actual income. The business remained stable under their management, with periodic guidance from me as a paid consultant rather than an exploited daughter. The distance I had created allowed them to see me as an independent adult with valuable skills and my own life, not just an extension of their needs and expectations. One Sunday afternoon, I met my mother for coffee, something that had become a monthly tradition. As we settled at our usual table, I noticed she seemed more reflective than usual. "I've been thinking a lot about the past few years," she said, stirring her latte absently. "About how we treated you." I tensed slightly, unsure where this was heading. "We took you for granted," she continued, meeting my eyes directly. "We convinced ourselves we were giving you opportunities, but really, we were using your talents to prop up our business and lifestyle."
"I'm sorry, Natalie."
Truly sorry. The apology I had once desperately wanted now flowed naturally from her, without prompting or crisis to force it out. I felt a knot of tension I hadn't even realized I was carrying begin to loosen. "Thank you for saying that," I replied quietly. "It means a lot to hear you acknowledge it." "Your father feels the same way, even if he struggles to express it," she added. "Watching you build your own successful business has been a wake-up call for both of us. You deserved that opportunity years ago." My relationship with my father had improved more slowly. His pride made explicit apologies difficult, but his actions showed a growing respect for my boundaries and achievements. During the family Thanksgiving dinner, he had surprised everyone by raising his glass in a toast. "To Natalie," he said, somewhat stiffly but sincerely, "who taught us all that success comes from knowing your worth and standing firm in it." It wasn't exactly, "I'm sorry for trying to exploit you for years," but coming from my father, it was significant progress. My brother Tyler and I had also begun rebuilding our relationship. After the initial fallout, when he had clearly sided with our parents, he had gradually come to understand my perspective. During his Christmas visit, he had pulled me aside for a private conversation. "I should have supported you more," he admitted. "I always knew they put more pressure and expectations on you, but it was easier to stay out of it. You were establishing your own boundaries by moving across the country," I pointed out. "We each found our own way to break free." Beyond family relationships, I had built a fulfilling life that reflected my values and ambitions. I launched a financial education program for young women, teaching basic financial literacy and entrepreneurial skills at community centers across Chicago. The program was my way of helping others avoid the financial dependence I had experienced. Perhaps the most unexpected development was meeting David Reynolds, a small business attorney who referred several clients to me. Our professional relationship had gradually evolved into friendship and then something more. Unlike previous relationships that had fizzled under the pressure of my family obligations, this one thrived in the healthy space I had created in my life. "I admire how you established boundaries with your family," he told me during an early date. "That takes tremendous courage." My support network extended well beyond David. Melissa remained my closest friend, having witnessed the entire journey from crisis to resolution. Dr. Jones continued to provide guidance as I navigated the evolving relationship with my parents. And I had developed new friendships through professional networks, community involvement, and shared interests, connections that were solely mine, not extensions of family relationships. The ultimate symbol of my independence came when I purchased my own condominium, a beautiful one-bedroom with a home office and a view of the Chicago skyline. As I signed the mortgage papers, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. This was a home I had chosen, that I could afford through my own efforts, without sacrifice or exploitation. During the housewarming gathering, surrounded by friends and family, including my parents, who came bearing a thoughtful gift rather than expectations, I reflected on the painful but necessary journey that had brought me to this point. "A toast," Melissa announced, raising her glass. "To Natalie, who showed us all that sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do." Later that evening, as the party wound down, my father approached me on the balcony where I had stepped out for a moment of quiet. "You've built something impressive here," he said, gesturing to encompass both the apartment and, I sensed, my life more broadly. "Thank you," I replied simply. He hesitated, clearly struggling with what to say next. "I wasn't a good father to you these past few years. I put the business above your happiness. I regret that." Coming from him, this halting near apology meant everything. "I know, Dad. I'm proud of you," he added gruffly. "Not just for your success, but for standing up for yourself, even when it was against me." We stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the city lights below. "Would you have paid the mortgage if we hadn't thrown you out?" he asked suddenly. I considered the question carefully. "Probably. For longer than I should have." He nodded, understanding the implication. Then maybe, in a strange way, that terrible fight was necessary. It was, I agreed. Sometimes relationships need to break completely before they can be rebuilt in a healthier way. As I reflect on this journey now, I recognize that walking away from my parents' home that day was both an ending and a beginning. It ended a pattern of exploitation and unequal expectations, but it began a process of self-discovery and authentic connection. The lesson I learned, sometimes painfully, is that true family relationships must be built on mutual respect, not just obligation or guilt. That setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for healthy relationships. And most importantly, that knowing your worth and requiring others to respect it isn't just beneficial for you. Ultimately, it's better for everyone involved. So if you're struggling with family expectations, financial manipulation, or the guilt that comes with setting boundaries, remember that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away, not forever, necessarily, but long enough to establish who you are and what you deserve. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family? How did it change your relationship? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about navigating complex family dynamics. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your worth isn't determined by how much you sacrifice for others, but by how truly you honor yourself.